You didn't fail me by loving your wife still. You failed me when you stayed silent in the moment I was reduced to less than human. When your presence didn't shield me. When your love didn't reach across the room. Even with your child in my arms. But I understand now. You're grieving. And grief makes cowards of the best of us. Still, I love Chloe. That will never change. And for a time, in your home, I felt something like a future. Maybe that was the gift. Maybe that's all it ever needed to be. If our paths cross again, I hope we're both braver. Amara. Elliot closed his eyes. He pressed the letter to his chest and stayed there for a long moment. The air around him buzzing with regret and something else resolve. That night, back at home, Chloe asked the same question she asked every night now. Any news? Elliot knelt beside her. She's okay, but she needed space. It's Sina. Chloe's face fell. But I wrote her a letter. He added, would you like to write one too? She nodded quickly. Together, they sat at the dining room table. Elliot wrote first. His words precise, but honest. Amara. I was silent when I should have spoken. I was safe when I should have been brave. I let my fear of public scrutiny outweigh what I owed you. Protection. Acknowledgement. Truth. I'm sorry. I don't want to move on from what we had. I want to move forward with it. Come home. Or let me come to you. Please. Then Chloe's letter short. Scrawled in crayon. I miss you. I love you. Daddy made pancakes, but they weren't as good. Come back. I saved you the red crayon. They mailed the letters together the next morning. There was no reply for days. Then a week. Chloe stopped asking. But Elliot didn't stop hoping. One Friday evening, just as the sky turned lavender above the Manhattan skyline, a package arrived at the door. No return address. Inside, a drawing. A stick figure family of 3. And beneath it, in careful handwriting, sometimes love leaves to see if it's missed. Thank you for noticing. M. Elliot stared at it. Breath caught. He turned the drawing over. On the back, just a line. See you soon. Ender Parrish. The first snow of February had come late. But when it arrived, it fell thick and fast. New York was blanketed again, and the city seemed to sigh under its weight quieter. Slower. Kinder in its hush. Chloe was in the living room that evening, coloring by the fireplace. Her new drawing was full of bright yellows and reds summer colors, as if she were willing spring to come early. Elliot stood in the kitchen, pouring hot chocolate into 2 mugs. He added the marshmallows carefully. Just how Amara used to 3 in each. Chloe always counted. He'd been waiting for a sign that her note wasn't just closure, but a key. Do you think she'll come back before my birthday? Chloe asked suddenly, not looking up from her drawing. Elliot paused. I hope so, he answered. She knows where we are. That's something. I having seasoned. Chloe tilted her head, then drew a heart in the corner of her paper. I think she misses us. Ards, I think so too. When to Kattig. Just then, the doorbell rang. Elliot frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. The neighborhood rarely saw visitors unannounced. Especially not after dark. Especially not in snow like this. Chloe perked up. Maybe it's a package. Elliot set down the mugs and walked to the front door, adjusting the sleeves of his sweater. When he opened it, the cold hit him first. Then his heart did a strange, slow twist. Amara stood there. Snow clung to her coat and in the curls of her hair. Her cheeks were flushed from the wind, and she looked like she'd walked from another world just to get here. In her hands, a small suitcase. Nothing more. I hope I'm not too late, she said softly. Elliot stared for a moment, unable to breathe, much less speak. Then, almost as if his body moved before his brain did, he stepped aside. She entered slowly, her boots damp, her gaze flicking across the space like it was both familiar and foreign. The warmth wrapped around her instantly. The smell of cocoa, the sound of Chloe's pencil scraping the page, the golden light on the hardwood floor, it all tugged at her chest. Chloe looked up and dropped her crayon. Amara. She launched off the floor and into Amara's arms before anyone could say a word. Amara dropped the suitcase and caught her mid-leap, holding the child so tightly it was as though she was afraid she might disappear again. "You came back," Chloe whispered. "I told you," Amara said, kissing her hair. "You were never not my family." They stayed like that for a while still, breathing each other in. Elliot watched from a few feet away, his throat tight, his hands still cold from the door handle. Eventually, Chloe pulled back and looked at both of them with wide eyes. "Do you want cocoa? Daddy made it, but it's okay." "Arthur." Amara smiled through tears. "I'd love some." "IMCM." Chloe grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the kitchen like nothing had changed. Like time had folded and erased the ache. Elliot followed slowly. They sat at the counter, Amara on one stool, Chloe beside her, Elliot across. The mugs were warm, the silence tender. Finally, Amara looked at him. "I wasn't sure if I could come back," she said. "Not without feeling like I was asking for something that wasn't mine." "Adia's." Elliot met her gaze. "It was always yours. I do under. I needed to know you'd say it out loud. That you'd stand up. Not just beside me, but for me. I'm Andri. I failed once," he admitted. "I won't do it again." He pulled something from his pocket. A velvet pouch. He placed it on the counter, carefully sliding it toward her. She hesitated before opening it. Inside, a simple, gold pendant, oval-shaped, engraved with a single word on the back. "Home." "It's not a gift," he said. "It's a promise that this house, this life, isn't complete without you. It is next tune." Amara touched the pendant, running her thumb across the engraved letters. Her lips parted, but no words came. Then Chloe reached out, placing her small hand on Amara's. "Please don't leave again," she said. "I won't," Amara whispered. "Not unless you push me out with a broom." "Tour did," Chloe giggled, and Elliot let out the breath he'd been holding for weeks. That night, they sat in the living room together, Amara curled on one side of the couch with Chloe nestled against her, Elliot on the other side, legs stretched toward the fire. Chloe fell asleep first. Elliot looked over the top of her head and caught Amara's eyes. "I don't want to take things too fast," he said, "but I do want to ask you something." "We no do." "Okay." End quote. "Would you stay?" She arched an eyebrow. "Like, forever stay?" "Maybe not forever right now," he said, voice soft. "But long enough for Chloe to stop drawing stick figures. Long enough for us to build something real. At us." Amara nodded slowly. "Yeah," she said. "I think I can stay for that." Later, when he walked her to the guest room, the same one she'd once packed up in silence, they stood outside the door for a long beat. He touched her hand. "I meant what I said in that letter. About wanting to move forward, not move on." "I man it. I know," she replied. "And for what it's worth, I'm not here to rewrite what you had before." "Everyone," Elliot nodded. "But we can write something new." "Aiding," she smiled. "We already started." "I think that's dated." Sunlight broke through the curtains like an old friend. For the first time in weeks, the Graves house did not wake in silence. Instead, laughter rang down the hallway. Soft footsteps padded against the floors, and the scent of warm cinnamon drifted from the kitchen. Amara stood by the stove in a gray knit sweater and jeans, barefoot, humming an old Motown tune under her breath. She flipped a pancake with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how her audience liked it, crispy at the edges, soft in the middle. Behind her, Chloe sat on the counter, feet swinging, hair wild from sleep. "I think today's a good day for heart-shaped ones," Chloe said, watching the batter sizzle. "Heart-shaped? Huh?" Amara glanced over her shoulder, grinning. "What's the occasion? You came back. That's like Valentine's Day for real life." "It is actions of Hadaj." Amara paused. Her chest swelled. She leaned over and kissed Chloe's forehead. "Then we'll make heart-shaped pancakes until we run out of love." "Oh," Chloe giggled. "That means a lot of pancakes." "I say." In the doorway, Elliot stood watching. His sleeves were rolled up, a newspaper in one hand, his coffee in the other. He hadn't said anything yet. He didn't need to. The sight before him was everything he'd been trying to hold together and everything he thought he'd lost. When Amara turned and saw him, she smiled, not shy, not cautious, just honest. "You're up late," she teased. "Had a good reason to sleep in?" "Andy." Chloe slid off the counter and ran toward him, hugging his waist. "We're making pancakes forever now," he laughed, bending to kiss the top of her head. "Forever's a long time. Kiddo. Is a ride." "Exactly," Chloe said with the authority only a child could summon. Amara handed Elliot a plate, steam curling off the heart-shaped stack like an invitation. They sat together at the kitchen table. No fancy dining room. No stiff posturing. Just the three of them, passing syrup and sharing laughter. For once, there was no past trying to climb back in through the windows. Only the moment, and the warm, quiet certainty that they were building something worth holding on to. After breakfast, Elliot took Chloe to school. Amara stayed behind, rinsing dishes and wiping the counters. She hummed softly, less like a melody now, more like contentment. When Elliot returned, she was out back, standing by the garden plot that hadn't been touched since fall. She wore his coat, the sleeves too long, her breath visible in the cold. He stepped onto the porch. "What are you thinking?" "That this yard has potential," she said. "A swing, some tulips, maybe tomatoes." "Anne, you planning on staying long enough to harvest tomatoes?" She turned, arching an eyebrow. "You planning on giving me a reason?" He descended the steps slowly, stopping just beside her. "I am," he said. "One honest reason at a time." "Is." She studied him, then reached out, brushing a hand along his coat collar. "You're different." "Aye. So are you." "Overzealous." He hesitated. "I know it's early," he said, "and I know what we had was delicate, but I also know that I've never seen Chloe this alive, or felt this certain. Certain about what?" He looked at her. "That we could be something whole, not perfect, not replacing what was, but whole in our own way." "Aye." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the pendant, the one he'd given her. "Home." She pressed it into his hand. "I never wore it," she said. "Not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid I'd believe it too much. Our man." Elliot swallowed. She continued. "But now, I'm ready to believe it." "The FC." He closed his fingers around the pendant and nodded. That night, after Chloe fell asleep to the sound of Amara reading a bedtime story, her voice warm and rhythmic, Elliot poured 2 glasses of wine and waited in the den. Amara joined him, curling into the opposite end of the couch. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. The fire crackled, low and steady. Outside, the wind had died down. Inside, time moved slowly. Eventually, Elliot broke the silence. "I was thinking of reopening Grace's clinic." "Aye." Amara looked over, surprised. "The one in Harlem?" He nodded. "She built it from the ground up. It's been closed since." She placed her hand on his. "I think that would be beautiful." "Is not it as done?" He took a breath. "I want you involved. If you'd want to be. You understand people. And you care. And I think you'd help me keep her legacy alive, not as a shadow, but as something new." Amara was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a softness in her voice, she said, "I would love that." With created additions parted, he nodded, relief washing over his features. "And, Elliot? Yeah? I'm not just staying for Chloe, or even just for you. I know, misabetted. I'm staying because, for the first time in a long time, I want something to grow." End quote. She reached for his hand, fingers threading through his, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man trying to survive his past. He felt like someone planting roots. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that felt almost unreal, like waking from a long, harsh dream into a world that was finally warm again. Chloe's mornings were filled with chatter and bright drawings. Her nights ended with Amara's voice humming lullabies into the dark. Elliot, who once spent his evenings buried in spreadsheets and press calls, now found himself leaning into slower moments. Family dinners. Board games on the floor. Stories told in the kitchen over boiling pasta. But peace, like winter light, is often thin and fleeting. It was late on a Wednesday when Elliot's past came knocking wearing perfume and entitlement. Amara was setting the table. Chloe upstairs brushing her teeth. When the doorbell rang, Elliot opened it without checking the camera. Standing in the entryway, dressed in a camel-colored coat and holding a designer handbag like it was a weapon, was Genevieve Langston, one of Grace's closest friends, and a longtime socialite with a stake in New York's elite circles. She didn't wait for an invitation. "I saw the headlines," she said. Stepping inside, Elliot stiffened. "Genevieve, this isn't a good time." "I was knowed." She ignored him and glanced around the foyer, her eyes quickly landing on the scarf, folded neatly on the side table. "Amara's. So it's true," she said coldly. "The maid. She's still here. And well, she has a name," Elliot replied, voice flat. "Yes. Well, names don't buy respectability. Work stand." He stepped between her and the rest of the house. "Why are you here?" Genevieve smiled, sharp and practiced. "I'm trying to help you, Elliot. This whatever this is, it's not going to end well. You've got investors, clients, media eyes on you, and they're all whispering about how far you've fallen since Grace passed." "AD, he bristled. "I didn't fall. I grieved. Regularly. And now you're playing house with a woman whose resume wouldn't get her through the front door at half your events. Do you really think the board won't take action? Or that your daughter won't pay for this in 10 years? Elliot's fists clenched. Before he could respond, Amara's voice came from behind him. "I've heard enough." Everwide. Genevieve turned. Amara stood in the hallway, holding a folded cloth napkin. Her voice was calm, but her eyes, they burned with quiet strength. "This is his home," Amara said evenly. "And mine now, too. You don't get to walk in here and spit on that because it makes you uncomfortable." Genevieve scoffed. "You think this little domestic fantasy will protect you from the real world? This isn't some fairy tale." "No," Amara said. "Fairy tales don't come with grief, racism, or judgment wrapped in designer silk. But this is real. The hurt, the healing, and the love we're building in spite of people like you. It is nine." Genevieve's lip curled. "You're nothing." I'm everything Chloe needs," Amara replied, stepping forward. "And I'm exactly the kind of woman Grace would have wanted her daughter to be raised by." "Oh." The room went still. Genevieve's face darkened. "You're going to regret this," she said to Elliot, but he didn't flinch. "I already regret letting people like you define how I lived for so long." Genevieve turned on her heel and stormed out, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. When the door closed, silence fell again. Elliot turned to Amara. "I'm sorry. Wins, of course. You don't have to apologize for her." "I'm stayed." He stepped closer. "No. I mean for all the times I let voices like hers speak louder than mine. Or yours." 8. Amara looked up at him. "You didn't today." With Odu's, he reached out, gently touching her arm. "I meant what I said. This is your home, and I will never let anyone take that from you." "Is the stab?" She nodded once. Then Chloe called from upstairs. "I'm ready for my story." Amara smiled faintly and turned to go, but Elliot caught her hand. "She's not the last ghost that'll come knocking," he said quietly. "Are you sure you're strong enough for this?" Amara looked him square in the eyes. "I've lived through worse than whispers." "Is blue gettest." That night, as she tucked Chloe in and sang softly under her breath, Elliot sat outside the door, listening, and when Amara stepped out, he didn't say anything. He just held out his hand. She took it. Later, in the quiet of the living room, he brought out a photo album, one he hadn't opened since Grace passed. "Do you want to see her?" he asked. Amara hesitated, then sat beside him. Page by page, he showed her Grace laughing, dancing, holding baby Chloe. They talked quietly, not about what was lost, but about what could be honored. When the last photo closed, Amara leaned her head against his shoulder. She was beautiful, she whispered. She would have liked you, he replied. She would have challenged me. She challenged everyone. To do for a minute, he smiled. Outside, the wind picked up again, but inside the house, the storm had passed. By the time March rolled in, the first green shoots began pushing through the frosted soil in the garden. Amara had started planting despite the lingering cold. She said things needed time underground before they could bloom in the light. Elliot had smiled at that. She wasn't talking about seeds. Every Saturday, Chloe helped her, wearing oversized gloves and a pink beanie. She'd dig with focused determination, while Amara guided her gently. Not too deep, baby. Let the earth breathe. Israeli minus. Elliot watched from the patio most mornings, sipping coffee, his world narrowing to these moments, simple, unshaken, real. But nothing real ever stays untouched. That Monday, Elliot's phone rang at dawn. Mr. Graves, this is Miranda Walker, managing partner from Pentalion Equity Group. We need to speak. He sighed. What's the issue? I'd prefer to say this in person, but there's concern among the board members. Some have received letters, anonymous, raising questions about your personal life, about your choices. Isnatella, he pinched the bridge of his nose. You mean the woman I love? There was a pause. That's one way to frame it. He met Miranda that afternoon in his office downtown. She slid a folder across his desk, thick with printed screenshots, social media posts, and emails. He didn't need to read them. He knew the pattern already. Whispers dressed as facts. Fear disguised as concern. Let me be very clear, she said. There's no policy breach, no contract violation, but perception shapes power. You know how these things ripple. I think. Elliot's eyes didn't waver. And what's the board suggesting? Distance, she replied. Until things settle. No public events. No family outings that invite speculation. Keep it quiet. He stood slowly, adjusting his cuff. Let me be clear in return. I built this company with transparency, with dignity. I will not treat someone I care about like a liability. Oh, then be prepared for pushback. They adapted. He didn't flinch. Let them push. It free. That night, as he stood at the stove flipping quesadillas for Chloe and Amara, the smell of garlic and cheese filling the air, he glanced at the two of them laughing over spilled juice and a half-tied braid. They were worth every consequence. Later, after Chloe had gone to bed and the dishes were done, he told Amara. She listened quietly, arms folded, eyes unreadable. I expected it, she said after a while. But it still stings, he replied. She nodded. I've been a scandal to people like them before I ever walked into your life. I have a date sickness. Elliot reached for her hand. You're not a scandal. You're my beginning again. Tensurers, she searched his face. And if this costs you everything you've built? He didn't hesitate. Then I'll build something better. Is to us. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. I won't let you burn your life down for me. You're not the fire. Amara, you're the reason I'd walk through it. Regulations. The next morning, he did something unexpected. He called a press conference. No media blitz. No staged statement. Just Elliot Graves, standing at a podium with the city seal behind him, addressing the whispers himself. I've been fortunate to lead Graves Holdings with integrity and vision, he began. But no legacy is worth protecting if it requires silence when truth demands a voice. He looked out at the crowd of reporters. Amara Dorsey is not just a woman I care about, she's part of my family. She is kind. She is brave. She has taught my daughter to laugh again. And if that offends those invested in my company, then maybe it's time they invest elsewhere. Is not a go, the room murmured. Elliot didn't blink. He continued. This country was built on people daring to love across lines drawn by fear. I won't be part of drawing them again. Not in my business. Not in my home. By the time he walked off stage, his phone buzzed endlessly, half praise, half outrage, but his spine was straight, his heart lighter. When he returned home, Amara was waiting on the porch. Chloe curled up beside her with a book. "I saw it," Amara said. He sat next to her. "I didn't do it to prove anything," he said. "I just couldn't let them rewrite our story." "I can penned." She turned to him. "I love you." Jeezoned. The words hung there quiet. Simple. Solid. Elliot's eyes softened. "I love you too." "Well," from her lap. Chloe grinned. "Are you guys gonna get married or what?" They laughed. Amara leaned her head on Elliot's shoulder. "Let's just grow the garden first." 18. And in that moment, it was enough. Because love, real love, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stay. The week after the press conference brought an unexpected calm. No board member called for Elliot's resignation. Stock prices held, and while some investors grumbled behind closed doors, others quietly voiced admiration. It seemed that Elliot's bold declaration of love had reminded people of something America often forgets. Dignity isn't found in conformity. It's found in courage. But not everyone was ready to let it go. One morning, as Elliot dropped Chloe off at school and kissed her goodbye, a black SUV pulled up outside the school gates. From the passenger seat stepped a man Elliot hadn't seen in over a decade. Nathan Caldwell. Tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than some people's annual salaries. Former chairman of the Graves Board, old friend of Elliot's father, and, most importantly, the kind of man who believed legacies were best protected by silence. Elliot felt his stomach tighten. "Nathan," he greeted coolly. The man offered a thin smile. "I'd hoped we could speak." "Oh, Elliot glanced around. Parents shuffled past. Children laughing in the snow-covered yard. "This isn't the place." End quote. "Then make one. Doesn't it?" They agreed to meet at a private lounge that evening. It was one of those members-only places with leather chairs, heavy drapes, and the ghost of cigars in the air. Nathan was already waiting when Elliot arrived. A glass of scotch untouched in front of him. "I've known you since you were in short pants," Nathan said, skipping pleasantries. "Watched you build Graves Holdings from nothing but a name." "He's Proco," Elliot nodded once. And now I'm watching you gamble it all for a woman who, no matter how lovely, will never be accepted in certain circles." Elliot's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe I need new circles." "It's Series I," Nathan sighed. "You're not hearing me. This isn't just about you. This is about the legacy you're shaping for Chloe." "Where?" Elliot leaned forward, voice low. "Don't you dare use her to justify your bigotry." "I demstow. This is business." Elliot. "AD. No. This is fear talking. Yours. Not mine." When stewed, Nathan's face hardened. "The world hasn't changed as much as you think. It's not resented." Elliot stood slowly. "Then let me be the one to change it. One room at a time." He left without another word. That night, back at home, Amara noticed his silence. She was folding laundry in the guest room, now permanently hers. The closet held both her clothes and his button-downs. The nightstand had Chloe's drawings tucked into the drawers. She was no longer a guest here. She was woven into the walls. "Something happen?" she asked gently. Elliot told her everything about Nathan. About the warning. About the slow erosion of old friendships he once thought immovable. When he finished, Amara didn't offer comfort. She offered clarity. "You know, I've had people look at me like that my whole life," she said softly. "Like I didn't belong in the room. Like my skin came with a price tag. I hate that you've had to carry that. Once to carried it too." She folded a shirt slowly. "I hate that Chloe might one day feel it too." "It says." Elliot stepped closer. "Then we protect her. We show her a love that doesn't flinch when the world stares." "IDs." Amara looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "And when it throws stones, we build with them." In another way. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Amara laughed softly, brushing away a tear. "You're starting to sound like me." Elliot smiled. "You've always been the better poet." Everyone. The next morning, Elliot made a decision. He returned to the same office building, same boardroom, same men in suits he used to defer to. He brought Chloe with him. She sat beside him at the polished mahogany table, feet swinging beneath her chair, holding a small stuffed bear in one hand. "I want you to meet someone," Elliot said to the room. "This is Chloe. She's not a shareholder. She's not a partner. But she is the reason every decision I make matters." He looked around. "You talk about legacy. This is mine, and I will not let anyone shame the family I'm building just because it looks different from yours. Take it." He turned to his daughter. "Do you want to say anything?" "Sweetheart?" Chloe looked up, then simply said, "Amara makes the best pancakes and hugs. She makes our house feel like a home." "I didn't." Silence. Then one board member, Miranda Walker, smiled. "That's good enough for me." "Right, Al." Elliot took Chloe's hand and walked out. At home that evening, he found Amara in the garden, kneeling beside the first green sprout poking through the thawing ground. "It made it," she whispered. Elliot crouched beside her. "So did we." "Is videoed." She looked at him. "Even if more storms come?" He nodded. "Especially then. I was one." She placed her hand in his. They didn't need grand promises. No fancy rings. No announcements. Just roots in shared soil. And the knowing that love, when planted deep enough, could weather anything. Spring came in soft waves. Mornings began earlier. Now sunlight poured through the windows like a warm invitation, and the scent of fresh earth lingered in the backyard garden, where tulip shoots pushed their way toward sky. Chloe had taken to calling them Amara's flowers. She'd even drawn a label and taped it to a popsicle stick, planting it proudly beside the sprouts. Amara didn't protest. She smiled and let it stay. Inside the house, there was a sense of settling. Rooms that had once echoed with grief now pulsed with laughter. Footfalls, bedtime stories, and sometimes unexpectedly quiet. The kind of quiet that feels full instead of empty. But the past rarely stays buried. That Wednesday, a letter arrived. It wasn't postmarked. No stamp. Just a cream-colored envelope, slipped under the front door in the middle of the afternoon. The handwriting was sharp, elegant, and unmistakable. It was from Grace's mother, Vivian DeWitt. Elliot held it in his hands for nearly an hour before opening it. He sat at his study desk. The window behind him opened to the sound of wind in the trees. He unfolded the note carefully, as if it might crumble. "Elliot, I saw the press conference. And the photos. I've waited long enough. I'd like to meet her. Not to judge. Not to scold. To understand. Vivian." He read it twice. Then a third time. Vivian was a woman of few words and sharper instincts. For years after Grace's passing, she'd stayed away grieving privately, mourning not just her daughter, but the version of Elliot she once believed in. This letter was a door creaking open. Later that night, after dinner, Elliot told Amara. Her reaction wasn't what he expected. "Okay," she said simply. "Okay?" he asked, surprised. "You're not nervous?" "Oh, I'm terrified," she replied, folding laundry with careful precision. "But if I say no, she'll think I'm hiding, and I don't hide anymore." He sat beside her. "She can be difficult. This is tenser. So can I," Amara said with a small smile. They arranged to meet for brunch on Sunday. A quiet cafe on the Upper West Side. Private booth. No press. No photographers. Just three people carrying pieces of the same woman in their memory, each shaped differently by grief and time. When Sunday came, Amara wore a soft navy dress and a beige trench coat. She left her curls loose, her makeup minimal. Chloe stayed with a friend for the morning. As they entered the cafe, Vivian was already seated. She was tall, regal in posture, with silver-white hair swept into a twist and pearls at her throat. A cane rested against the table, though she barely leaned on it. Her eyes, ice-gray and watchful, flicked up at their approach. Amara felt the weight of that gaze like a test. Elliot pulled out her chair. "Vivian," he greeted. She nodded. "Elliot. Miss Dorsey." "Ask Amara," she said gently. extending a hand. Vivian took it. Firm but not cold. "Amara." Then, "It is not." Silence settled briefly between them as the waiter arrived, took their orders, and retreated. Then Vivian spoke. "I was not kind to Grace in the final year of her life." "Was not, Nate?" Elliot looked up sharply. "She was tired." Vivian continued. "Worn down. I thought it was motherhood. Stress. But I didn't ask. I judged. I thought she should smile more. Be more grateful. I didn't know she was sick. Was now there's two, mate." Her voice did not shake, but her fingers trembled slightly as she folded a napkin in her lap. "And when she died, I made her death about me. I was angry. At God. At you. At the world. I refused to see anyone who reminded me that I'd failed to be what she needed. It Fred." Amara said nothing. She let the words come. Vivian turned to her. "Then I saw a photo of Chloe smiling again. Beside you. Easter Burkazonster." Amara blinked. "I saw joy in her face I hadn't seen since Grace passed. And it forced me to ask myself, what right do I have to resent the one person who brought my granddaughter back to life?" Amara leaned in slightly. "I don't want to replace Grace." "Nighty Welf. I wouldn't let you," Vivian said, her tone still sharp. "But love doesn't replace it, re-roots. And you've done that." "Isdi." Amara nodded. Voice quiet. "She saved me too." They spoke for nearly 2 hours. About Chloe. About Grace's favorite songs. About the smell of her hair after the rain. They cried a little. Laughed gently. When they stood to leave, Vivian surprised them both. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a locket. Gold. Oval-shaped. Etched with a rose on one side. On the inside, a photo of Grace holding baby Chloe. "I want her to have this when she's ready," Vivian said. "But until then, I want you to hold it, so she remembers this family doesn't just belong to the past." "Edith." Amara closed the box, clutching it tightly. "Thank you." "Well," Vivian stepped forward, then paused. "You're stronger than I was," she said. "Don't let this world break you down." "Eat." She turned to Elliot. "And you protect them, not just with your name, with your spine, with his CK. "I will," he said. As they walked out into the spring light, Elliot slipped his hand into Amara's. "I think Grace would have liked that. O's. She would have told us we were crazy." Amara smiled. He chuckled. "And then baked a pie anyway." Well, that night, they showed the locket to Chloe. She held it like a treasure, whispering, "I wish Mommy Grace could see us now." "I do, Panid." Amara kissed her cheek. "I think she can." The garden was in full bloom. Tulips stood proud beside rows of basil, and tiny white flowers dotted the fence line like lace. Chloe had planted a row of sunflowers, her new obsession, and every morning she dashed out to see how tall they'd grown. One afternoon, Amara found herself kneeling in the dirt with her hands covered in soil, humming to herself as she worked the roots of a stubborn rose bush into softer ground. The sun warmed her neck. The air smelled of lavender and fresh grass. She didn't hear the knock at the door, but she heard Elliot's voice a moment later, tight, clipped. "Why are you here?" Amara stood slowly, wiping her hands on her jeans. She stepped around the garden bed and froze at the edge of the porch. A woman stood in the doorway, younger than Elliot, but not by much. Blonde, tall, polished, a kind of elegance that came from expensive upbringing, not effort. She wore sunglasses pushed to the top of her head and carried a monogrammed handbag in the crook of her arm. "Kendra," Elliot said again, this time louder. "You can't just show up here." "I freighted. I called." The woman replied. "You didn't answer. So I came." Amara stepped forward. Her breath caught somewhere between her ribs. Kendra turned and noticed her. "Oh," she said flatly. "So the rumors are true." Was. Elliot moved quickly, stepping between them. "This isn't the time," he said. "No?" Kendra crossed her arms. "Because the ink isn't even dry on the estate transfer. And now you're playing house with your maid?" Amara's spine straightened. Elliot's jaw tensed. You're not going to come into my home and insult someone who's given more love and grace to this family than half the people who showed up for the funeral. Oh, Kendra laughed, bitter and sharp. Is that what this is? You needed someone to fill the silence? Get to the point, he said, voice low. Kendra's expression hardened. You're trying to reopen Grace's clinic. In her name. Would Yusuf say? That's right. And Day. Well, I own 25% of that property. We have to so. Elliot frowned. Grace bought you out of the partnership years ago. However, technically, she did, Kendra said, pulling papers from her bag. But the land deed still has my name attached. Grace never filed the change. Probably forgot. But now it's mine again. Legally. I sees and jawed. Amara stepped forward. Why are you doing this? Kendra looked at her. Because I won't let some stranger rewrite the story of a woman she didn't even know. 18-7. I knew her daughter. Amara replied. I've dried her tears. Held her through nightmares. Loved her like my own. You think Grace wouldn't have wanted that? Kendra didn't answer. Elliot moved to stand beside Amara. So what now? Kendra straightened. Either you buy me out at triple market price, or I sell my portion to someone else. Away. You want money. Don't. I want control. She snapped. And I won't let you dress Grace's memory in borrowed robes. I'd. With that, she turned and walked away. They stood in the silence that followed. The sound of Chloe's laughter drifting faintly from her bedroom window. Later that evening, Amara sat on the porch, turning the locket over in her hand. The golden casing felt heavier now, not just with memory, but with risk. Elliot joined her, handing her a cup of tea. She's bluffing, he said. You sure? No, but I'll find out. It's, Amara sighed. You could give her what she wants. Keep the peace. Enter. He looked at her. I've lived with peace that came from surrender. I'm done doing that. She nodded. Then we fight. He reached for her hand. She's not the last person who'll try to pull this apart, he said. Grace had a lot of ghosts. Well, I'm not afraid of ghosts, Amara whispered. It's the living I've learned to be careful with. I endeavored. That night, as Chloe slept and the wind rustled the garden leaves, Elliot called his lawyer. Then he called the city clerk. Then he pulled out the box of files Grace had left, old contracts, partnership forms, donation receipts. At 2 a.m., he found it. A handwritten amendment, signed by both Grace and Kendra, dated and witnessed, unfiled, but real. Amara leaned over his shoulder. What is it? Proof, he said, that she gave up her rights. She just never followed through. Okay, Amara's breath caught. Will that be enough? He looked at her, determination in his eyes. It has to be. The next morning, before Chloe woke, Elliot met Kendra in a downtown cafe. Neutral ground. He slid the paper across the table. I have no interest in suing you, he said, but I will. And I'll win. Ask. Kendra stared at the document. I'm giving you one chance, he continued. Sign over your portion. At market rate. No games. Man. And if I don't? Elliot leaned forward. Then I make sure your name is printed beside every story about a woman trying to sabotage a clinic named after her dead friend. 10T passed. Her fingers twitched. He stood. Think about it, he said. You used to believe in something. Kendra, maybe it's not too late to remember. I gutted. He left the cafe without looking back. That evening, a courier arrived at the Graves residence. Inside the envelope, a signed deed transfer. No note. Just closure. Elliot walked outside to the garden, where Amara knelt beside Chloe, helping her water the basil. It's ours, he said. Amara looked up, blinking. The clinic? He nodded. Chloe clapped. Can I plant sunflowers there too? Elliot laughed. You can plant a whole jungle if you want. Minus. Amara stood and wrapped her arms around his waist. I'm proud of you. Oh, he kissed her forehead. I'm proud of us. Eyes, because this time, the roots were deep, and no one could pull them out. The morning of the clinic's reopening arrived with a quiet kind of electricity in the air. It had taken months of legal unraveling, renovations, inspections, and dozens of late nights sorting through Grace's old files. But finally, the doors were ready to open again, not as a memorial, but as a beginning. A new brass sign had been mounted on the front brick wall, the Grace Graves Community Wellness Center. Below it, in smaller letters, for every soul who needed a second chance. It was Amara's addition. The ceremony was small. By design, Elliot had insisted no press, no sponsors, just people, families, volunteers, the nurses and therapists who would serve the neighborhood, the children who would one day find safe space behind these doors, and Chloe, of course, standing proudly beside Amara in her new blue dress, clutching a giant pair of novelty scissors for the ribbon cutting. "Amara," Elliot said, adjusting his tie nervously as the clock neared 10. "You ready?" Amara smoothed the front of her dress and looked toward the clinic, blinking against the sun. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." Well, as guests began arriving, the sound of laughter, warm greetings, and old friends reuniting filled the air. Among the crowd, Amara spotted Ms. Dolores, the elderly woman from her old block, now smiling with her cane and wrapped in a church hat that matched her shoes. Across the sidewalk, a mother with 3 kids held a plate of muffins and whispered, "That's her, the woman who saved that man's daughter." "Is say have her a ben today?" Amara flushed, but smiled. She didn't need the praise. She just needed to know the right people had found their way here. Inside the clinic, the room smelled faintly of lemon and fresh paint. Walls were hung with local artwork. Every detail had been chosen with intention, from the hand-woven chairs in the waiting area to the sign on the front desk that read, "Come as you are." At 10:05, Elliot stepped forward with Chloe, Amara at his side. A hush fell over the small crowd. "Thank you for being here," Elliot began, voice steady, though emotions stirred beneath. "This building is more than brick and paint. It's a promise to care, to show up, to remember." When 5 out, he glanced toward Amara, his hand brushing hers briefly. "And none of this would be possible without the woman standing next to me. Amara Dorsey is the heart behind this new chapter. She is the reason I remembered what it means to serve. To lead with grace, pun fully intended. To why?" Laughter rippled. Chloe beamed. Amara stepped forward. "I didn't know Grace Graves," she said softly, "but I know the life she left behind. I see it in Chloe's eyes, in Elliot's stubborn kindness, in this building that carries her name. It no do." She looked over the crowd. "This isn't a rescue mission. This is a neighborhood saying to its people, you matter. Your health matters. Your pain matters. And most importantly, your healing matters." Oh, there were quiet nods, even a few tears. Chloe stepped up, scissors in hand. "Can I cut it now?" she whispered. Amara smiled and nodded. "Go ahead, baby." Was now placed, with a dramatic snip. Chloe cut the red ribbon. The crowd erupted in applause. Elliot kissed the top of his daughter's head, then turned to Amara and kissed her in front of everyone, not showy, not grand, just full of quiet devotion. Inside, the first families began walking through the doors. Children tugged at their parents' hands, pointing at the colorful murals. Elderly couples marveled at the accessibility ramps. Nurses stood by in pale blue uniforms, ready to receive new patients with open hands and open hearts. Amara watched it all unfold, standing in the center of the lobby like a tree planted in firm soil. Vivian arrived an hour later. She wore a pale lavender coat and a brooch shaped like a dove. She didn't say much, just walked the halls slowly, occasionally brushing her hand along the wall. At one point, she stopped in front of a photograph of Grace hung in the center hallway, her smile wide, hair tied up, holding newborn Chloe. Vivian turned to Amara. "She would have loved this." I hope so," Amara replied. "She would have loved you, too." 01. They shared a long, understanding look. As afternoon fell, Amara slipped out to the back of the building, seeking a moment of air. Elliot found her there minutes later, holding a ribbon scrap in her fingers. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just thinking. Do, my friend." "About what?" "About how much it takes to believe we deserve good things." Then, he stepped closer. "You do. We have companies really ones in stayed." She looked at him. "So do you." Was knowing. A breeze stirred the trees, scattering new leaves across the pavement. "You know," she added, "for a long time, I thought survival was the best I could hope for. Is never. And now? Now, I want joy. I want roots. I want Sunday dinners and messy mornings and a garden that outlives us." "Why?" he smiled. "You've got all of that here." "Edie is content." She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. "Then let's never stop earning it." "I major." That night, after the last guest had left and the sun had dipped behind the skyline, Amara sat in the garden with Chloe curled in her lap, both of them wrapped in a quilt. Elliot brought them hot cocoa and joined them under the stars. "I think Grace would have liked today," Chloe whispered sleepily. "I think she would have, too," Amara replied. Elliot wrapped an arm around them both. And in the quiet, in the garden they'd grown together. 3 hearts beat in time, not haunted by the past, but held by it. The house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. A pie was cooling on the windowsill, Amara's peach and brown sugar creation. One Chloe insisted should always be made when it's a celebration day. And today, even with its quiet simplicity, felt exactly like that. It had been 6 months since the clinic opened. Since that red ribbon fluttered to the ground and a whole new chapter began. Since then, the community had embraced the space. Kids came in for after-school tutoring. Elderly neighbors got their prescriptions filled with dignity. And once a week, Amara hosted a women's circle in the small conference room, where laughter and tears flowed more freely than the tea. Elliot's business continued to thrive not because of silence or image control, but because he stood taller in truth than he ever had in fear. Some investors had walked, but better ones stepped in. People who understood that integrity wasn't weakness, it was the strongest currency there was. It was early evening, and Amara stood in the living room, holding up a picture frame she had just unpacked from a box she'd left untouched for years. Inside the frame was a photo her mother, standing outside a run-down Louisiana diner, apron smeared with flour, beaming proudly. Behind her, a hand-painted sign that read, "Open Hearts." Always, Amara smiled, brushed dust off the glass, and found a place for it on the mantel beside Chloe's drawings. Grace's locket, and a clay handprint the size of a biscuit. "What you doing?" Chloe peeked around the corner, cheeks still red from running outside. "Just adding someone important to the room," Amara said. Chloe patted over. "Is that your mommy?" Amara nodded. She was strong, brave, a little too loud sometimes, but she loved with her whole heart. "Is no dough, like you," Chloe whispered. Elliot entered just then. His sleeves rolled, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. "Dinner's ready, girls." "Aye," Chloe grinned. "Can I set the table?" "You can," Elliot said, handing her a stack of napkins, but no forks under the cushions this time. "Aye, that was one time." They laughed as she darted off to the dining room. Elliot moved beside Amara, watching her as she looked again at the photo. "You've built something," he said softly. "So have you." In his 9, he leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple. "You ready for the next step?" Amara turned. "Which step is that?" He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. No fanfare, no dramatic speech, just Elliot, heart in hand. "I don't want perfect," he said. "I don't want a big wedding or a parade or anyone's approval but yours. I want this. You, Chloe. Mornings with burnt toast and Sunday gardens and bedtime songs." Reposed. He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a tiny diamond set into the curve, nothing flashy. But it sparkled when the light hit just right. Amara blinked. "Are you proposing in the kitchen? Where else do all the best things happen?" She laughed, tears spilling before she could answer. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times. "Yes, I." He slipped the ring onto her finger. and they held each other like time had folded in half just to bring them here. Dinner was slightly overcooked, the pie too sweet. Chloe spilled juice twice, but it was perfect. After dinner, they curled up on the couch. Chloe nestled between them, the dog snoring at their feet, the fire crackling in the hearth. Amara looked around the room, the photo on the mantel, the toys in the corner, the worn sofa that had become their favorite spot. She wasn't just visiting anymore. She was rooted. She was home. And not because someone offered her a roof, but because love real, tested, unwavering had offered her a place to belong. Later that night, as she tucked Chloe into bed, the little girl looked up at her and asked, "Will you be my mommy forever?" Amara swallowed hard. She sat on the edge of the bed and cupped Chloe's face. "I already am. Baby. I always will be." "Is sometime." Chloe threw her arms around her. In that moment, every insult, every eviction, every night she had slept on cold floors or walked through snow with blistered feet, it all melted. It had led her here. When Amara stepped into the hallway, Elliot was waiting, holding 2 mugs of tea.